I'm Jesse Rellinger,
I'm Jed Johnson.
and we're both agronomists for Pinnacle Agriculture.
Today we're just going to give you a quick update on some things we've got going out in the fields. Obviously, northeast Kansas has been waterlogged with a lot of rain, as the rest of the Corn Belt. I'd like to talk about a little bit of the herbicide activity that we've got going on out in the fields, with time of basically how long those pre's have been on those fields and what we're expecting to see as we start drying up. Before this last round of rain, a lot of soybean pre's actually went on ahead of about 5.5 inches right before our last update. Now we're looking at another 3 to 4 to 5, depending on where we're at, maybe more. Some of those pre's have actually been on close to a month now. Normally when we're talking about overlapping residuals and trying to keep those fields clean, we're shooting for that 25 to 35 days out of that initial pre. So we're anticipating some weed breaks and some earlier applications, especially in the soybean fields and also some of the early posted corn fields. We're going to give you some tips on things to look at and evaluate so that you can have a plan ready, so when it does dry up and you see those weeds, you've got some things to go on. Jesse's going to talk about kind of the fate of those herbicides when they're sprayed next.
So there are several factors that come into play with herbicide degradation. The first one is microbes that degrade the herbicide. So basically what the microbes do is they use the herbicide molecules to have extra energy to feed. What microbes like is 80 to 90 degrees. They enjoy pHs of 5.5 and above, high organic matter, and they provide for 50 to 100% saturation. In waterlogged soils, however, they do not feed as much because they have to have oxygen to feed.
Since we are so waterlogged, it's just natural leaching of the chemical through the profile. If we've got a very water-soluble product, such as a metallochlor, then we're going to expect it to move through the soil profile and get away from where we want it to stay in that top couple inches where our weeds are germinating.
Other factors affecting the fate of soil-applied herbicides include chemical decomposition, which is a process which herbicide molecules react with something; soil absorption, which is when herbicides have an electrical charge that cause them to bind to soil particles; volatilization, which is a vaporization of a herbicide to a gaseous form; photodecomposition, which is the breakdown of a herbicide by sunlight; plant uptake and metabolism, which is when plant roots take up the herbicide or plant foliage intercept the herbicide; and lastly, surface runoff, which is herbicide molecules being carried off by surface flow of water.
On our bean pre, if our bean pre is pretty well failed, where do I go now? So obviously, guys, with the Liberty Link option, we can tank mix some Liberty and maybe go in a little earlier. Pair it with a residual such as Warrant, Zidua, something basic residual like that might be able to stretch far enough into the season to keep us from going in a third time on that acre. When we're in the Extend system, we're basically looking at the same thing: a fumefacin, a Warrant Ultra, a flat Zidua, something like that we're going to go in. Corn, on the other hand, if we're going in after a pre's already been applied, we need to be watching out how much mesotrione or the Callisto component we have out there on the ground. We do have some limits per planting season on that. We need to be looking for ragweed and things like that might have to take a shot of status or Diflex, which are both safe and dicambas, to lessen our risk of potential green snap, given we get a northeast Kansas storm with some high winds.
We've seen a lot of pigweeds and water hemp emerged out in the fields. It doesn't take very much for them to go ahead and get up and going. Usually they'll grow 2 inches even in this waterlogged situation. And during that time they can have several growing points.
When we're going out there after those water hemp that are fastly growing, we need to make sure we've got the proper carrier, adjuvants, and tank mix partners to make sure we're making contact on all those growing points to make sure we're taking care of our weed problem.